You may ask, how did this tradition get started? I'll tell you. I don't know. But it's a tradition. And because of our traditions, every one of us knows who he is and what God expects him to do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Torah. I am Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson with NRM Streamcast, and we'll spend our time talking Torah, learning stuff, and having fun while we learn. You can always send your questions in the comments to our mailbag at letstalktorah@gmail.com, and of course, I will answer as many as I can. Or you can check out our webpage, letstalktorah.net. Amazing webpage. We got the archives, we got the new shows, we got a place for questions and comments. We like the nice ones, but we accept all of them. We even have a place if you would like to join the show. You never know. You could be the next star. And of course, the all-important donate button, which we ask if you can be kind enough to help us out, to take care of our expenses here. That would be amazing and allow us to keep teaching and spreading Torah and understanding and lessons and morals. It would really be a beautiful thing. And of course, we appreciate everything you do. And of course, we do mention that we are still and continuing to grow in the top 10 in FeedSpot's 10 best Jewish book podcasts. And today we are still at number 5. Just in case you didn't notice, it's getting cold outside. I'm sure you didn't realize we are now in December, and it usually gets cold in December, and it's cold. You know, it's so interesting. It's not really that cold. It keeps telling me the real feel is 7, is 10, but it's really in the high 20s or 30. That's not like 0 degrees. Right? It's just so interesting that we're so used to the warmer weather. It takes time for our bodies to get used to the fact that it got colder. A couple weeks from now, we'll be more acclimated. Just right now, it just feels cold. But here in the studios, in the amazing studios in NRM Streamcast, it's warm and toasty because I hear something in the ceiling going on. It might be air conditioning, might be heating. But in any case, it's way warmer here than it is outside. So in the last show, we left off. We were talking about the marriage of Jacob to Leah. So let's backtrack to get everything clear. Jacob had made a deal with Lavan that I am marrying your younger daughter, Rachel. That's pretty clear. And Lavan could care less. So when they're getting ready to send the bride down the walkway, down the aisle, he sends Leah, or he takes Leah with him. It would seem Jacob has not interacted with Leah or Rachel once they made the deal. That's part of Lavan's trickery. Jacob did prepare. He gave what we call simanim, signs, passwords, code words, to Rachel to be said under the canopy, under the wedding canopy, so he'd know that it's Rachel. But now Leah's going. Now, just again, what were they? It was 3 laws that applied to women. One is family purity. One is taking off the dough, a little piece of dough when you make fresh dough to give to the priest. That's called challah. And the third one is lighting the candles Friday night for Shabbos. So Rachel sees her sister is going down. Her sister's going to get it there. Completely clueless. Have no idea what's expected. No one told her. Her father says, okay, you're marrying Jacob. Great. I'm so happy. I'm so excited. My whole life I wanted to marry Jacob. Now I get to marry him. It's the best thing ever. She doesn't know that it's a setup. She doesn't know that Jacob wants to marry Rachel. No one told her. So Rachel realizes her sister will be massively embarrassed. Massively. And Rachel's attribute, her midah, her raising their trays, if that's how you pronounce it, is she is private. It's called sneus. She's very private in the house, not out there, not in your face, and she can't handle her sister being embarrassed. But she doesn't tell her sister. This is part of her privacy. She doesn't tell her sister, really I'm supposed to marry Jacob. But our father clearly wants you to marry Jacob. So, so goes life. But you got to know, I already have a password with him. So I'm going to give you the password. That way, you'll get away with it. Shouldn't do that. Instead, Rachel goes over to Leah and says, Jacob, he once told me, probably he never had a chance to tell you, there's 3 things that a Jewish lady has to know. This family purity and taking some of the bread, some of the dough, and lighting Friday night candles. If he asks you anything under the canopy, that's what he wants to know. So Leah says, oh, great, so good you told me. And she goes down clueless. Under the canopy, Jacob doesn't know who she is. I mean, he assumes it's Rachel. And he asks her for these 3 things. Oh, yeah. Family purity and the dough and the lighting the candles. Oh, okay, very good. They get married. And then the verse tells us the next morning, he wakes up, it's Leah. Oh, I mean, it's been Leah the whole time. Except he thought it was Rachel. And he makes it quite clear immediately that, hello, I'm supposed to be marrying Rachel. That was the deal I made. The 7 years for Rachel, not for you. So she might not be embarrassed, but as a lady, you can imagine she's extremely hurt. She just got married, and her husband telling her that she's the wrong wife. And Jacob immediately goes to Lavan and says, that you gave me the wrong one. Remember I told you? Younger daughter, Rachel. You gave me older, the daughter you got, right? You gave me older and Leah. You totally played around. You got to give me Rachel. Lavan, the always perfect, amazing politician, is unfazed. He says, I have to tell you the truth. In our neighborhood, the younger daughter does not get married before the older daughter. The older daughter has to get married first. The only way you can marry Rachel is if Leah is married. Now she's married. Now you can marry Rachel. But since we already set up the parameters that my daughters are worth 7 years of your work, guess what? You'll work for me another 7 years, and you get Rachel. But, Lavan says, I trust you, Jacob, so much that if you say you're going to work another 7 years, I know it's a done deal. So after the week of Sheva Brachas, after the 7 days of feasting, you can marry Rachel. And Jacob says, okay. Jacob very much wants to marry Rachel, even though Isaac told him, go get married and come home. But Jacob wants to marry Rachel. So he's willing to stay another 7 years. He clearly has this love for Rachel's. Exactly what it is, why it is, spiritual, who knows what. But there's no question that he wants Rachel. Otherwise, he should be going home. It is interesting that midah, that character trait that Rachel has of being private, her children inherited. King Saul, when it was already predetermined that he was going to be king, he was already anointed. When they were getting together to make the lotteries to to show who God is choosing, even though King Saul already knew it was him, he's like hiding off to the side. It's private. Queen Esther, very private. She doesn't announce that she's Jewish. She's related to Mordechai. She just goes quietly along with the whole process till Mordechai tells her that she has to make a party with the king and tell the king about Haman. That is that character trait, this privacy that the family of Rachel has. By the way, Leah has the attribute of giving thanks. And who comes from her? Judah comes from her. King David comes from her. Right? They're the ones, we're going to talk about it, but King David says, Psalms is all from King David, or most of it at least, right? It's all praise. It's all thank you. Right? And having that attribute, it's interesting. The ability to say thank you is the ability to be humble. Humble people say thank you. Haughty people could care less. They have nothing to do with you, not interested. So Judah is able to admit that he married Tamar. King David will be humble in multiple places. So what the character traits that these mothers had gets passed down. And when you have character traits, you should know that they're passed down to your children. So make sure you have good character traits. Anyways, so Leah feels second class. Leah feels hated. Some say maybe she was hated. Most of the commentaries that I usually see make it sound like that she wasn't hated, but she just wasn't the first wife. But I saw the other day that some want to say that she was right. Jacob did not really like her as much because he wanted Rachel. So it's and this carries on through her life. So what happened? And it was really all the matriarchs, all the mothers, had difficulty having children. We see Sarah all those years, and Rebecca, we see they had to be praying, and Rachel's having problem having kids, except for Leah. Because God says, Jacob doesn't like her, I'm going to make her life a little easier. She's going to have an easy time having children. And sure enough, she becomes pregnant right away, and she has Reuven. Now, a lot of the names, the Torah says a reason for the name, but the Torah doesn't always say the full reason. It will tell me a reason, and I wanted to spend some time maybe to give us a feeling. When we hear these names, it'll give us a feeling for who these mothers were. Somebody once told me, a lady I met, she said, she named her kid after Derek Jeter. It was like a Yankee shortstop. Like, I'm thinking, that's who you're naming your kid after? He's a baseball player. He's a good baseball player. But what about him do I honor that I want to name my kid after? Right? As names are a big deal. The name affects the child. How it affects and how much it affects is an interesting question and hard to answer, but it affects. So let's go through some of these names. So our first child is Reuven. You can break up the word Reuven to Re'u b'ni, see my son. So the simple explanation, right? And this is what the verse says. See, God saw that I'm hated, that I'm not as liked, and therefore God gave me a son first. Reuven. Rashi brings down a Gemara, says, see the difference between my son and my brother-in-law. My son, or really my father-in-law's son, which is Esav. Because my son is the firstborn. And he's going to have the rights of the firstborn will be taken away from him and given to Joseph. But when the brothers want to kill Joseph, my son is the one that comes along and saves him. Again, I don't know in her prophecy of giving the name if she knew all the details of this, but she understood that her son was going to be amazing, while her brother-in-law, right, that's Esav, so he sold the firstborn. He sold the Bechira to Jacob, and then he wants to kill Jacob over it from last week's Torah portion because he lost out on the blessings. Then she has her second son. Second son is called Shimon. Shama, God heard that I was hated, and he gave me another son. Now it's interesting. So that means the first son is named after sight. God sees. The second son is named after God hearing. So we have two different ways of learning something. You can see and you can hear. So it is interesting that, generally speaking, sight means from a distance. God's looking. God's up in heaven. He's looking down. He sees what's going on. And then there's hearing. There's understanding. There's a clarity. So the first one is God saw. But now God really hears. God really understands. Right? It's up close. So Leah, it keeps thanking God. God, you see that I'm suffering. God, you hear that I'm suffering. You can hear the thank you. The name is not thank you, but you can see her whole attitude, her whole focus to naming her children is always based on thanks. Always. Now, what happens? The next son is Levi. That's her third son. She has 3 children, one after another. So Levi is either from the word levaya, which means to accompany. My husband will accompany me. I mean, the joke, of course, is that a mother has 2 hands, but she has 3 little kids. So you can't do it by yourself. You need another pair of hands. My husband's going to have to hang out. Another simple explanation is that the matriarchs were all prophets, prophetesses, and they knew that Jacob was destined to have 4 wives and 12 tribes. I did my job. I had 3. So I'm good. So can't have no complaints. I'm good. It's interesting to think about. The Torah talks about that if a wife is hated, there's going to be issues with the children. But in this case, Leah has amazing children. Look, Levi, the priesthood comes from Levi. So she has great children because she's just in the background. She's quiet. So Jacob doesn't like her as much, right? But Lamaisa, in truth, God takes care of her. Another reason, by the way, it says also the language is that God called him Levi because Levi is from the word to give presents, and the priests are given presents. There's 24 different presents, the tithing and other stuff that are given to the priests. But the word of accompanying works well with the priestly family because they accompany God, right? They're the teachers, they're the temple service, they did not sin by the golden calf, so they hang out with God. So they're Levi, they accompany God. But again, my husband's going to have to hang out with me. Thank you. Right? It's another thank you. Look what you did for me, God. You made sure that my husband has to hang out with me. So every name that Leah gives is wrapped around this idea of her character trait of always giving thanks. Sure enough, we get to the next son. She has now 4 children, which now means that she's for sure better, at least average-wise, right? We already said there's going to be 4 wives, 12 kids. If you have 4, you now have more than what's expected, right? Because 4 wives, right? So it would have averaged 3 each, but I got 4. So this child she calls Judah. Yehuda, that means to praise. So now she actually uses the name praise in her son, Yehuda. And again, everybody says that this one is easy to see the gratitude, right? This is the easy one, right? Because she just says straight out, your name is thank you, Hashem, right? And you know, it's because this one shows this character trait of gratitude. And as we said before, that a person with gratitude is automatically a humble person. And it's automatic because if I can thank you, I recognize you gave me something. If I recognize you give me something, then I'm humble, right? It's the haughty people who don't recognize anything. They think it's all theirs, and anything they get is coming to them anyways. So it happens to be, this may be the reason the Jewish people are called Jews. The Hebrew word is Yehudim. His name was Yehuda, and we're called Yehudim, or you take off the Y, turn it into a J, it becomes Jews. So the Jewish people is called after Yehuda, whose name means thanks, whose mother excelled in saying thank you. Okay, so Rachel's getting nervous. She's not having kids. Leah's having kids. It's interesting. Leah, her desire is to be the head of the household. Her husband should love her best. She's the one in charge, and she wants that position of being in charge of the family. Rachel is the one in charge of the family. She's the one Jacob loves. She wants kids. So everybody always wants what everybody else has. Leah, who has the children, would rather be in charge of the family. Rachel, who is in charge of the family, wants kids. So she has it out with Jacob, and Jacob says, your grandmother, or my grandmother did something. Sarah brought in another wife as a merit. You also bring in another wife as a merit, and then maybe it'll help you. So she gives her maidservant, who happened to be her half-sister, Bilhah, and her first child is called Dun. Dun means to judge. So Rachel says, God judged me, and he gave me a child. It's a very, very strong word. Judge? We never want to be judged. Why do I want to be judged? I want mercy. I don't want judgment. But Rachel's the one that says, God judged me. That's dangerous. A person always has to be careful how they talk. And perhaps this is why Rachel is the one that dies early, because God is judging her. Then the next one is called Naphtali. Naphtali is a hard translation. They say, I made sacred schemes. Rashi says, I became close to my sister now that technically these kids are considered mine, or through me, or I prayed and become equal to my sister, or I've waged a divine struggle. In any case, all these names mean that I did, and as I have to do something to have children. It's not good enough to sit back and say, God will take care of me. My job is to do everything in my power to be successful. In this case, to have children. Whatever tricks, extra merits I have to do, and then God will take care of me. Okay? We can't sit back and wait for miracles. And this, by the way, if you listen to the last show, I think this is really fascinating. The last show in the intro, worth listening to, the very beginning, I was talking about our matching campaign. And I was telling you the dilemma going through my mind of, we did a lot of work. We got professional videos and professional marketing, and there was a lot of effort put in. It cost more money, and we did raise more money. But the question is, how do you figure out at what point am I putting in effort? And it was clear that some of the very large checks we received during and at the last minute were all from God. It wasn't coming from us. So where's the line? So maybe this is the answer with the tribe of Naphtali. Maybe the answer to the tribe of Naphtali is that I have to do everything I could. Rachel has to go ahead and do all kinds of schemes and prayers and struggles to have children, that her maidservant should have children, so she should have children. She can't just sit back and say, God, you'll have to take care of me. You got to do whatever you can, and then God will take care of you. It's just an interesting, this word hishtadlus, or putting in effort, is just a fascinating concept. Leah wants more children, which is interesting. She has 4, but she wants more children. So first she has Gad. I'm sorry, she gives her maidservant Zilpah to Jacob. She has 2 children. One is named Gad, which means luck has come. He was actually perfect. He was already born without the foreskin. His name, literally, they translate it as luck came, but it's missing the aleph. It's Gad, luck came, but it's missing the aleph. So it's written a little. So it's, in other words, there's an imperfection. It's incomplete, because as complete as God was when he was born, his offspring are not so perfect, because they choose to live on the other side of the Jordan. Their other son is Usher, which is like happy am I. It's like, it's a praise, right? Again, she's praising God. This one's born complete. This one, I'm happy. This one is going to live in Israel and have good fortune because he lives in Israel. And as my time is flying, I want to, not only is it flying, the music's already playing. And it's unbelievable. I've just barely begun. Anyways, the music is playing. I hope you enjoyed it short and sweet. Thank you, of course, to all wonderful sponsors. Listeners, you know I can't do it without you. Thank you to the production team. I have Alan in the back today. Hope I've left you some food for thought. Until next time, I am Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson. You've been listening to Let's Talk Torah on NRM Streamcast. Until next time, don't forget to think about it.
A million dreams for the world we're gonna make. There's a house we can build. Every room inside is filled with things from far